here's the story of how I joined Riot Games. Um, this was 6, 7 years back, and I had my own consulting company, and Riot was actually one of my customers. And from day one, they were like, come join us. We're a growing company, and I'm like, no, thank you. I have my own, company. I'm doing my own thing, And they're like, okay, come and let's do an engagement. So the person I was in contact with, Mark, he introduced me to the two co-founders, Mark and Brandon, and we got to know each other. And I'm an agile guy and like an agility guy, and they're like, help us with leadership alignment. I'm like, okay. And they're like, listen, we're growing very fast. So they were at that point, this is what, 2013, 2014. They were growing at a speed of 45 people every 2 weeks. I want you to try to imagine that. 45 new people joining the company every 2 weeks. And in that context, they had a very strong culture, but they were slowly like, okay, there's misalignment. When you grow that fast, there's misalignment happening in the organization. And so anyway, after a lot of interviews and discussions and all that, I said, okay, I'll help you guys out, and let's do an offsite. Let's do a big, like, 2-day offsite with all the leaders of Riot Games, 200 of them from around the world, and let's bring them together to debate and discuss some of the core principles and values that they have, because that's where the misalignment it's in those core principles. So they said, okay, crazy idea, but let's try it out. And so we tried it out. And let me tell you this. It was a 2-day offsite, and this is sort of a picture from it. And by lunch of day one, so this is day one, lunch of day one, everything that could go wrong went wrong. It was a disaster. Guys, I don't know if you understand this or not, but it was the worst point in my professional career, right? I just wanted to vanish. I wanted to die. I wanted to fly away. The people that were working with me, some of them were crying. Some of them started hiding. People were standing up, shouting, leaving the room, and saying, "This is a waste of my time." The co-CEOs at that point were like, "What are we going to do?" And all this happening, and there's a camera crew filming all this, and the camera's like right in my face, and I'm sweating, and I'm like, ah! It was bad. It was bad. And that's just half of day one. Somehow we got through day one. We're doing a retrospective at the end of the day. We're seeing what happened. We have a plan for day two. We're hoping it's going to get better. Day two goes by. It's a bit better. That's a Thursday, Friday, okay? So I go home on Friday. I'm like, oh, the worst 2 days of my life. My wife is like, are you okay? I'm like, no. And then Monday morning, I get an email from the CEO. Let's have lunch. Now, for any one of you, what does that mean? Let's have lunch means thank you very much. It's over, right? You guys agree with me? Yes? Okay. So let's have lunch. We have lunch. I remember it was sushi. And we're sitting and talking. And, Mark is, how you doing? I'm like, come on, like, let's get to it. And he's like, okay, we want you to join Riot. And I'm like, are you serious? What? Like, by the way, I'm not joking. The first thing that comes to my mind is like, who's videotaping this? Like, am I on camera here? Because you need to understand, it was so bad, right? And so when Monday morning you're expecting someone to tell you that was horrible, please leave and never come back, and we don't want to see you, but they tell you we want to hire you, you have to be like, are you serious? Is this for real? And I'm like, Mark, why? Why would you want to hire me? Like, I don't think I can show my face. I mean, these are the 200 top leaders in the company. I don't think I can show my face there. And he's like, but it wasn't that bad. I'm like, come on. It was really, really bad. He's like, okay, it was bad, but it exposed the problems and we took a risk. And, it was a very risky thing. And I'm like, so you knew it was risky? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, why did you let me do it? And he's like, because it could have worked. I'm like, but it didn't. He's like, okay, it's okay. And at that moment, I'm like, wait a minute. What are you saying here? He's like, listen, we want leaders that are willing to take risks. We don't want leaders that are willing to play it safe. What if it had succeeded and through this one engagement, we had aligned all of our 200 leaders? That would have been fantastic. But it wasn't a complete loss. We exposed the problems. We can continue to have the discussion. But we want leaders that are not afraid to take risks, that are willing to make experiments and try things out. And it was in that moment, guys, I was like, wait a minute. My entire career as a consultant, I've been working with C-level people, and everyone have said these words to me. We want to create a fail-safe environment. We want to create an environment where it's safe to fail, where people take risks, innovation. But when it comes to it, those same leaders don't accept failure. But here I am staring into the eyes of a man that was like acting upon that and saying, we don't want just to say it was okay. We want to hire you to continue this for us. And so the story continues. I went to my wife. I told her that. And she's like, wait a minute. We spent a whole weekend. I was like pampering you and, taking care of you because it was a really bad 2 days. And you're telling me they want to hire you. So it wasn't that bad. I'm like, no, it really was. And she's like, listen, you're not going to find a company like this easily. It's really hard to find founders, CEOs, like a company that really believes in that. You can go back to consulting any day, but when you find a company like that, stick with it. And so I actually sold my consulting company in DC. I moved to the West Coast, and I've been with Riot for almost 7 years now. And still, the leaders that remember this offsite, poke at me every once in a while and say, oh, is this one of those alignment offsites? And I'm like, it's been 7 years. But it's an amazing story that really shows what I want to talk about here. It's the culture of learning and experimentation. And that's really the essence of what we are trying to do as transformation agents, as agile coaches. We are trying to help create this culture of learning and experimentation and discovery and not being afraid to try new things, this growth mindset. So